That night, the road seemed to swallow everything in silence. The sound of the engine was the only company, until an instant changed everything. The impact was brutal, the body thrown against the metal, and the world shattered into pieces. What should have been just another trip turned into a nightmare with no return. The air disappeared, time stopped, and darkness took over. But what happened next cannot be explained simply as an accident. This is where the story begins to take on a bigger dimension, something that transcends life and death. If you enjoy delving into narratives that defy logic and reveal hidden secrets, subscribe now so you don't miss a single detail. And leave a like to strengthen this space of mystery and reflection. And if you feel that this experience deserves to be known by more people, share this video. Because what you are about to hear may change the way you see the boundary between the end and what exists after it. The sound of the world faded like a shattered lamp. There were no screams, no sirens. Only an emptiness so dense it seemed to have weight. The body, far away, consciousness, floating. Time did not pass, it simply did not exist. In place of seconds, there was an eternal interval where everything was nothing. This nothingness didn't hurt, it was cold but not icy, vast yet empty, a perfect absence. The mind tried to question, but words were impossible. Thoughts arose like shadows and vanished before taking shape. It was then that the strange peace brought a discomfort. Too much peace, too much silence. A silence that swallowed any attempt to remember who she had been. From some directionless point, a faint vibration touched what remained of his consciousness. It wasn't sound, it was like an echo that didn't come from outside but from within. A subtle reminder that something was still there, waiting to be recognized. He felt observed, but not by eyes, but by an invisible presence that examined not his body, but what he had been. In the silence, scenes ignited like matches in a dark room. The face of someone who once smiled, the phrase that was never spoken, the mistake that seemed small but now weighed like a stone. And then everything faded again, as if space itself did not allow for continuous memories. Peace transformed into an unanswered question. From the depths of this emptiness, a delicate sensation grew, a calling unfamiliar, not religious. It was something simple, yet impossible to ignore. A summons that used no voice, found no words, but pierced through the fog like light. The silence, once absolute, began to pulse as if nothingness itself were breathing. That's when he realized. Death wasn't dark, it was formless clarity, a clarity that didn't blind but revealed. It revealed that everything that seemed solid was fragile, and everything that seemed important was merely noisy. There, at the core of that silence, was a question. What if the end isn't the end? Even in its absence, the heart seemed to respond, not with beats, but with intention. A desire to follow that glimmer that called without insistence. Fear? Yes, but also curiosity. Who was there on the other side of the stillness, waiting without haste? Then the void opened not like doors, but like expanding consciousness. And at the height of this silence, where the world no longer existed and it no longer needed to exist, something approached, bringing not words but meaning. Death, at last, spoke without speaking. And the silence, once absolute, bowed, preparing space for the encounter that would change everything. In the heart of that absolute silence, something began to move. It wasn't sound, it wasn't light, but a presence that approached with firmness. The once suffocating void seemed to open up to reveal something greater. Consciousness, lost between nothingness and the unknown, felt observed. Not through human eyes, but through a force that permeated every fragment of his being. And then before him, a figure appeared. There was no celestial choir, no spectacle, only a serene presence, impossible to ignore. It was he, it was Jesus. Not like the paintings that adorn walls, nor like the stories repeated in temples. He was there, alive and real, emanating an energy that could not be described. His gaze did not judge, did not condemn. It was profound, as if it pierced through every memory, every mistake, every choice made. A gaze that revealed everything without needing words. The silence transformed into an invisible dialogue. The man asked nothing. There was no time for questions. But within him, an avalanche of feelings exploded. Fear, reverence, curiosity. Who could stand before such a presence and not feel small? Yet there was peace, a peace that did not come from the absence of pain, but from the certainty that he was before something eternal. Jesus didn't speak in long sentences. There were no speeches, only subtle gestures and a calmness that enveloped like a cloak. And in that instant, the void was illuminated not with physical light, but with a spiritual clarity that showed that death was not the end, but a passage. The encounter was not accidental, it was necessary. He realized he wasn't being punished, but invited. Invited to see beyond the life he knew, beyond human limitations. Every second in that presence seemed to expand his soul, as if the universe itself breathed along with him. The silence of death had transformed into revelation. And then, without warning, Jesus extended his hand. It was no longer a human gesture, but a call. An invitation to move forward, to see what few have had the chance to see. The heart, even outside the body, responded. Not with beats, but with surrender, for the unexpected encounter became the beginning of something greater. The man knew nothing would be the same after that moment. Because before him stood not only a sacred figure, but truth itself. And that truth would lead him to the next step, the vision of heaven. The outstretched hand didn't ask for steps, it cleared a path. When its presence touched the edge of the void, everything transformed. The darkness began to recede like mist dissipating in the sun, but it wasn't the sun. It was a delicate and absolute conscious light, which did not hurt the eyes and did not take up space. It revealed itself as if to say, "Look." And what was seen was neither a field nor a city, nor golden clouds. It was a living dimension, made of meaning. The sky didn't seem to be above, it was within, as if the very being were traversed by layers of peace. There were no walls, only subtle boundaries, doors without doors, trails that weren't paths, and yet they guided. Everything breathed, the space the light, and each breath brought a frequency of love that was not sentimental but structural, as if the architecture of existence were built of compassion. There were voices, but they weren't spoken. They occurred like vibrations that touched memories and healed without order. A melody without notes emerged, reminding us that life has never been random. The sky there showed that each encounter, each loss, each choice had left traces that now fit together like constellations. And for the first time, the heart, the one that didn't beat, understood that purpose is not a task, it's a direction. Jesus walked without walking. His presence didn't cast shadows, it produced clarity. And wherever he went, the atmosphere gained depth, as if the truth had more layers than anyone imagined. He did not point to thrones or glories, he pointed to an ancient memory, the value of existence. On the invisible surface of the sky, scenes emerged that were not judgment but an opportunity to see again with tenderness and precision. A memory of impatience, a delayed forgiveness, a small gesture that saved a stranger, everything weighed differently there. What was considered great lost importance. What was despised gained brilliance. The sky restored scale to what truly matters: presence, listening, the courage to love when it is most difficult. Clarity became teaching, and teaching the present. At a certain point, a luminous bridge appeared as a maturing idea. It wasn't a mandatory passage, it was an invitation. Jesus' hand didn't push, it waited. The call said, "Further on, deeper." Fear trembled, because beauty can be frightening when it reveals what we lacked. Even so, there was no condemnation, there was a chance. When he agreed to go, the light changed texture and became dense, sweet, almost familiar. As if the sky recalled the best of each earthly moment, the first sincere laugh, the hug that interrupted a collapse, the faith that had no name and yet sustained him. There, the word faith was not a label, it was a relationship. An invisible thread united everything and originated from Christ himself, as if he were the bridge and the destination. At the peak of this vision came the silent climax, a question that needed no language, you understand? It wasn't about rules, doctrines, or merits. It was about seeing the world in this light and returning changed. Heaven wasn't an escape from time, it was time healed, and this healing demanded a return. Jesus didn't promise ease, he promised companionship. With a gentle gesture, he showed the boundary between that peace and interrupted life. The light didn't go out, it withdrew. Heaven didn't close, it wasn't a door, it was an origin. And on the edge of the mystery, one certainty was sealed like a seal: returning would be a mission. To bring clarity into daily life, to make faith a path, and purpose a practice. Before returning, one last gift: complete silence without fear. A rest that fit in a sigh and contained eternity. And then, like one who guides without loss, Jesus granted the crossing. Heaven remained not as a distant place, but as a language that now dwelt within. The light, at last, became a compass, and the world, an invitation. The sky still pulsed around them as if every particle were made of eternity. Jesus' presence remained steadfast, but there was something different in his gaze. It wasn't a farewell, it was a decision. The silence grew heavy, as if the universe itself awaited the next step. And then, without words, came the revelation. It wasn't time to stay, the mission was still incomplete. The heart that seemed forgotten began to vibrate. It wasn't a physical beat, but a profound calling, as if life were being stitched back into the body. The man felt the transition, the infinite peace receding, the light becoming distant, and the weight of reality drawing near. It was like crossing an invisible border, where every second was a choice. To remain in heaven or return to the broken world. Jesus didn't impose, he simply showed. The return wasn't smooth, it was like being thrown back into a shattered body. The air rushed in violently, lungs burned, and eyes snapped open amidst the chaos. The smell of gasoline, the distant sound of sirens, the metallic taste of blood. The scene of the accident was still there, frozen in destruction. But inside, something had changed forever. The shock of life resuming brought confusion. Why return? Why leave absolute peace to return to human suffering? The answer lay in the gaze that still echoed: purpose. It wasn't about comfort, it was about mission. Heaven had shown that every gesture, every word, every choice had eternal weight. And now that weight needed to be lived. While the body struggled to move, the mind still carried fragments of the vision. The sky did not disappear, it remained as a mark, a spiritual scar. The return did not erase the encounter, it only transformed it into responsibility. Life was no longer just survival, it was witnessing. The man was breathing heavily, but each breath was a victory. He had crossed death, seen what few dared to see, and returned with a certainty that could not be ignored. The accident would not be remembered merely as a tragedy, but as a portal to a new way of existing. And as the sirens drew closer, bringing help, a feeling prevailed. Nothing would ever be the same. Because those who return from the silence of death do not return empty-handed. They return carrying a truth that cannot be forgotten. They return knowing that life is fragile, but purpose is eternal. The return did not erase the sky. It remained as an invisible mark etched on the soul like an unconsuming fire. Each breath, still painful, carried the memory of having crossed the boundary between the end and infinity. The body was wounded, but consciousness was awake, and in that awakening, a new vision was born. The world seemed the same: sirens, hurried voices, the weight of gravity. But nothing was the same. The gaze saw beyond the surface. Small details, previously ignored, now had value. The touch of a hand, the sound of a word, the simple act of existing. Everything became part of a greater purpose. There was no longer room to live as before. Experience brought no formulas, no dogmas, but clarity. Faith was no longer a distant belief, but an intimate certainty. It wasn't about religion anymore, but about relationship. Relationship with the invisible, with the eternal, with that which had been revealed in the silence of death and in the light of heaven. Man understood that living was not about accumulating but about giving, not about running, but about perceiving. This new vision did not promise an absence of pain. On the contrary, it showed that pain was part of the journey. But now, every suffering carried meaning, every loss was a bridge. Every encounter was a sign. Heaven had shown that nothing is wasted, that even the smallest gesture can echo into eternity. The accident, once a tragedy, became the beginning of a life that sought not only to survive, but to bear witness. To bear witness that there is something beyond, that death is not the end, and that purpose is real. The man knew he couldn't explain everything, but he also knew he didn't need to. It was enough to live in such a way that each step reflected the light he had seen. And so, between the weight of the flesh and the lightness of the soul, a certainty was born. Life is brief, but its meaning is eternal. The sky was not left behind. It walked alongside like a silent compass, reminding us that each instant is an opportunity to reveal what has been seen. Ultimately, the new vision wasn't about what happened there, it was about what would happen from now on. Because whoever returns from an encounter with the eternal doesn't come back the same. They return transformed. They return knowing that every breath is sacred. They return aware that living is, above all, carrying within oneself the memory that there is more beyond what the eyes can see. And so the experience comes to an end, but its impact continues to resonate. Stories like this remind us that life is fragile, and that the unknown can reveal truths that change everything. If you want to keep up with stories that cross the line between death and eternity, subscribe to the channel now. It's the first step to not missing any of these intense narratives. Then, leave a like to support this space and show that you also value stories that defy logic. And of course, share your perspective in the comments. What would you have felt if you were faced with such an experience? Your opinion can open up new reflections for everyone here. And if this story captivated you until the very last second, know that there's much more waiting for you. Alongside this video, there are other accounts of near-death experiences, other encounters that reveal secrets beyond life. Click there and stay with us, because the next video might be even more incredible than this one.